Hi, I'm Thomas Mancala, and I've got a doozy of a thing to talk about today. So I was watching some YouTube the other day, as one does, during these times, and I came across a pretty crazy ad. So the ad was for a website called Right Wing Tomatoes, and if I had to describe Right Wing Tomatoes, I would describe it as Rotten Tomatoes, but if the bad guys from World War II ran it. I thought it looked pretty bad, but I also don't want to judge a book by its cover, so I decided to check out the website itself and see if it really was as bad as I thought it was. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was so much worse. The first thing you notice when you go on to Right Wing Tomatoes is just how bad the website itself looks. The main page isn't terrible, but it really doesn't look great either. They clearly haven't heard from today's sponsor, Squarespace. Nah, just kidding. You really get a sense of how bad this website looks when you look at their movie list page. Your eyes are instantly assaulted by this terrible stock image of an old couple watching a movie. And it doesn't go away, it just takes up half the page. And good luck actually finding anything on that page because it doesn't feature a search bar. And the way the movies are arranged alphabetically just doesn't make any sense either. You'd get halfway done with the letter and then have to scroll all the way back to the top of that letter in order to see the other half of the list. And half of that page is just completely wasted because of that stupid stock photo. They couldn't seriously find any better photo to use. The photo itself looks like it came straight from the 1960s. I mean, it's really grainy, the expressions are really weird, and the wife's outfit really reminds me of a certain flag, and I'm not sure if that's just because I'm thinking too hard about it, or if that was actually their intent. So besides just design, another really disappointing thing about this website was just the lack of staff reviews that it had. So out of all of the movies on that horribly designed list, there were only 111 staff reviews, which was kind of disappointing because I wanted to do some reviews on just a bunch of movies that I liked, but they just didn't have staff reviews for a lot of movies that I wanted to review. They did, however, have a review for my all-time favorite animated movie, Coco. So I thought we'd take a look at it and see if he had anything insightful to say about it. So we're just going to ignore that graphic there. So every staff review features an overall star rating, whether or not you should boycott or support this movie, and then 6 categories rating various aspects of the movie. Now for the actual review. This was a pretty great film, not gonna lie. It's just sad that we can't have these same themes in movies led by white people and about my nation. One of the most popular animated movies worldwide was Frozen, but the themes weren't about the importance of familia, respecting your ancestors, unity, patriarchy, etc., like Coco was. Instead, if we're lucky enough to get blue-eyed blondes as leads at all, they have to denigrate the males and have protagonists spit on their tradition/culture. BuzzFeed puts it best. They are always subverting the Disney formula. Wow, there is a lot to unpack just in that first paragraph. He started off the paragraph with 2 pretty good sentences, immediately derailed the rest of the review with the next sentence. The author complains about not having these same themes in movies led by white people. Does somebody else want to tell the author this, or should I? There already are a lot of movies led by white people with these exact same themes. I mean, even his example of Frozen has at least one of those themes, the importance of family or familia, and the only formula they were really trying to subvert was the whole love at first sight trope, which I think is a good thing. But let's move on and see if there's actually anything redeeming in the rest of the review. It's just all so tiresome, so for that reason alone, you should not pay to support this film. But on top of that, they made it a statement about Trump. I did some digging, and it turns out that Coco was in the works since 2010. I'm certain Trump's election rhetoric made them drop everything and prioritize Coco, but we'll likely never know. It seems like they announced production of the film right around the time that Trump seemed to be the likely winner of the Republican primaries. But even if it was all a big coincidence, all the people who worked on the film made several statements that made the film clearly an anti-Trump movie. Thankfully, though, the story was already established and nothing in the film itself is political. There were no allegories about walls or anything like that. Well, I guess you could argue that Hector being prevented from reuniting with his family was due to strong border control, but they don't seem to demonize the border agents or the policy. Nor do they glorify it or make it a central point like Black Panther does. Am I seriously reading this right? Is he really saying that you should not support this film because the main characters are Hispanic? Nope, yep, I am reading that right. He is saying that. He then goes on to talk about how this is a statement about Trump, and his evidence for that is ridiculous. It started in 2010. 6 whole years, which included an election before Trump ran for office. And he goes on to say that because some of the people that worked on the movie shared their opinions, the whole movie itself is a political statement. But then he completely undermines his entire argument by saying, thankfully though, nothing in the film itself is political. He then in the next sentence backtracks what he said by saying, well, I guess you could argue that Hector being prevented from reuniting with his family was due to strong border control. Bud, did you and I watch the same movie? He couldn't go because his picture wasn't on the ofrenda, not because of border control. And there's a scene that clearly shows this. He gets past the border control and gets stuck in the leaves of the bridge. So even your own argument to your argument was wrong. I don't know how you have a debate with yourself where both points are wrong. Well, let's continue this. So, I think it was more of a relatable theme for the Mexican-American target audience, but without the political commentary intended. Easy to ignore, and it didn't even cross my mind until after the film. As for the affirmative action ratings, it's tough to say. I'd honestly get bored with only European princesses with slight variations. We are all interested in exotic lands and have been since long before Hollywood. But clearly, Pixar and Disney are just going through a list of minorities to make movies about. At least it was a homogenous staff, so no character felt out of place or like they didn't earn their spot as an actor. Which also allowed for more character depth, without screams of racism because they accidentally portrayed the one dark character negatively. It's similar to Black Panther in that regard. Think Hollywood is learning multiculti doesn't work well? Can't believe I just said multiculti. Oh, and there were strong females, but they were 100% accurate with my experience with hot-blooded Latinas and their matriarchal grandma. I've read that sentence like 25 times for this video, and every time it makes me cringe so hard. Lastly, the anti-God ratings are only there because it portrays a different afterlife and worship of ancestors. If you're a strict Christian, this may bug you, but they don't mention God once, and most Mexicans are Catholic despite this aspect of their culture, so it's up to you. Well, let's go through what this author just said. This is going to come off as a shock to everyone, but his first point is just completely wrong. I can't believe a grown adult can't figure this out on his own. Just because a character in a film or a movie is different from you doesn't mean that you can't relate what they learned to yourself. I mean, it's insane to me that this person can't enjoy this movie 100% because of the color of the person's skin. They even said that they liked a lot of the themes in this movie. But because the main character didn't have blonde hair or blue eyes, he couldn't fully enjoy this movie. The target audience of this film was not Mexican Americans. It's a family movie, meant for families. Not only that, but you even go on to say that you'd actually get bored with only European characters. But in the very next sentence, criticize Hollywood for going through a list. You can't say that you want more diversity and then criticize them for having more diversity. And this film just wouldn't work if the main characters were any other race, because the main themes circle around Hispanic culture. My next major complaint about this paragraph is the use of the word multiculti. I just don't like it, and I just hate reading the sentence after that. The author then tries to justify his reasoning for giving a 3 out of 5 for anti-God views by saying there was no mention of God, but that's not anti-God. They weren't saying, like, Christianity bad. They just had a different take on it. Not only that, but I specifically remember a scene where Miguel's grandma does the sign of the cross.
There. No guitar, no music.
Which is a Catholic thing. And last I checked, Catholics were still Jesus stans. I know I've said this for literally every single one of the paragraphs that we've read so far, but this one's just insane. All in all, consider this a point for Hollywood in the culture war. This was really well made, visually stunning, and had a solid plot to boot. And as a nationalist, I really do support all people have pride in their culture. I'm not going to give the cliche, I'm not racist, I have black friends routine, because there's no appeasing progressives with that, and because I am racist. Well, at least he's honest. Hell, unlike the champagne socialist, I lived and worked in the Mexican ghetto that they avoid like the plague. Hold up, I can't even finish this paragraph to point something out. While it wasn't the I have black friends, it was the I have worked with Mexicans before. And the reason the excuse I have black friends doesn't work is because it just brushes off whatever you said. You're still a racist asshole. Alright, we'll get back to the paragraph now. Yeah, we're gonna skip that thing in parentheses right there. I really enjoyed my time immersing myself in other cultures and even picked up some Spanish while teaching cute little Mexican kids English. But travel and real-world experiences made me racist more than anything else. Crime and welfare statistics don't resonate as well as memories tied to the five senses. So yeah, I am both racist, and I also want these people to thrive in their own communities. Well, I already made the main point I wanted to in this paragraph, but there is one other thing that I wanted to talk about, and that's the author's last point. The author's point was that although the author is racist, he still wants people to thrive in their own communities. But why? Why don't you want them in your own community? You clearly said that their culture was interesting to you, and it sounds like you had a generally good time, so I don't know why they can't integrate into your community. If we zoom in a little closer and actually read between the lines, it becomes pretty clear that the author just doesn't want to deal with their issues. Well, the final paragraph, I'm not even going to bother reading it. Basically, all you need to know about it is that it belongs in that one subreddit of people who think they're smarter than everybody else.
I'm also banned from anything that the high school cheerleaders go to, because every time I showed up, they all just...
The next review I wanted to take a look at was for the movie Moana. I chose more family movies because they're not really intended to be political, or so I thought, but apparently the guy at Right Wing Tomatoes really had an issue with this movie. Alright, I gotta talk about the picture at the top. If you're gonna Photoshop money onto people's mouths, at least do it well. It's not that hard. Rather than read the entire review line for line, I'll just kind of paraphrase it for you, because it really isn't worth reading the whole thing. His main gripe throughout the entire review is that it was anti-male, and his main piece of evidence for this is that I guess there were allusions to genitalia. Did I really read that right? Yeah, I really read that right. The author then kind of just spirals out of control after that. So I just watched Moana specifically for this video, and I don't get how the author of this review came to the conclusion that the hook represented a peen, or that the movie was anti-male in general. I could see why a lot of feminists really like this movie. It does a pretty good job of portraying a realistic female lead, without dragging down the male deuteragonist. The movie really doesn't drag Maui to make Moana seem better, and he doesn't have to tone down his masculinity like the article said. He just has to be less of an arrogant dick. I mean, even if Moana became Momana and was cast as a male, Maui's character at the beginning would still be rude and annoying. I'm still not entirely convinced that the author is watching the same movies that I am, because they didn't just tear down Maui in this movie. He was just as jacked at the beginning as he was at the end. He was just less of a dude bro. But I guess it wasn't your typical damsel in distress movie. I don't know what's not to like about this movie. It featured most of the themes that you praised Coco for having, and this time it is about people from your nation. Right? Last time I checked, Hawaii's still an American stan. So you might be criticizing me right now for picking movies that I like. So for the last review that we'll take a look at, I decided to choose a movie that I really don't like. This one's a shorter review, so I'll just read the whole thing. I was watching the film over Christmas holidays, and now that I'm woke to the JQ, I immediately had a hunch that this film was written by a Jew about his insecurities. The reason is because most Hollywood films champion the immigrant or outsider. I discovered this from a documentary/book called An Empire of Their Own. I highly recommend it. Here are relevant clips to help you understand how this relates to Rudolph and how I instantly knew Jews were behind the victimhood story. I just want to apologize now for having to read that, and I also won't be including any of the links that he mentioned because they're not worth it. Alright, back to the review. Sure enough, Rudolph was no exception. Here's a link to that article and a link to an alt-right satirical article elaborating on Rudolph's origins. To be honest, I put the film on in the background for the children I was with. Therefore, I hardly paid attention, and so I can't expand much further. Based on your previous reviews, I think if you were paying attention, you still wouldn't be able to expand very much. Oh well, you've probably already seen it. It is very nostalgic, and the claymation was done in Japan apparently. So you'll be able to enjoy it, but not like you used to. Hold up, what does that mean? Unfortunately, it's kinda too late to boycott, but I still say reject the victimhood subversion of our culture and refuse to buy the DVD. Just watch it if it's on TV. I'm not sure why he's telling us to boycott this movie. Is it because Rudolph is based off of a Jewish character? Is that really what he's saying? You know how at the beginning of the video I said picture Rotten Tomatoes, but if it was run by Nazis? It might have sounded like I was exaggerating, but I really wasn't. After reading these reviews, I think it paints a pretty clear picture of the quality of content on this website. Which brings me to my final point. Why did YouTube advertise this? YouTube is so quick to take down or demonetize videos that talk about stuff like this. So I don't get why they don't have the same level of vetting for advertisements. I'm not even sure why this got recommended to me. And maybe this wasn't a targeted ad? I don't know, have you seen this ad before? I just want to end this video, and I really should have started the video with this, but I want to make it very clear that I don't support any of the views of the author of these reviews. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a comment and a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. I'll be putting out more commentary videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching.